Hello, everybody. It's Mary Alice here, and I'm really happy to introduce to you a friend who is sitting in Brazil at the moment. I'm in Ohio, but this is Madza Ednir, and we met in 2015. It was wintertime in the Czech Republic, and we were both invited to a conference from the Scouting movement to support people who were working on issues with young people to come together, and that's where we met. And I remember being greatly attracted by your story and your energy, and wanted to make sure that we could talk about some of the work you were doing inside of the Story the Future Summit. So I just want to apologize in the beginning, folks, that our connection is not 100%, but you know, you can love technology and then you can also have to work with it. So please stick with us during the time we're talking. But Madza, can you say something? You're an educator, you're somebody who's worked with restorative justice, you've had focus on peace, and you're now working on the solidarity economy. So that's a big lot of stuff in your life that's about shifting the storyline. But maybe we start off with how did you come to start in education?
Yes, I started as a school teacher, and then I was studying at the university pedagogy, and at the same time I was working at school, and I felt the need to connect the university and the teachers. I saw that the teachers at the university, they used a language that teachers, school teachers, primary teachers, they didn't understand that academic language. And that's way I started to connect education and communication. I started to produce materials to make what I've learned at university accessible to the teachers in primary schools in Brazil. And this led me to be invited to edit a newspaper for teachers in São Paulo City. And then I came to work with some great educators in São Paulo that were starting a educative reform in São Paulo to make schools more democratic. After this work with editing this newspaper, I was invited also to work with the team of Paulo Freire. Paulo Freire. This is a friend of mine has made this puppet from Paulo Freire. Hi, Paulo Freire, I love you. He was my teacher. I studied with him at the university when I took a master's degree. He had just returned from exile at this time, because, you know, he was arrested for some time by the dictatorship here in Brazil, and then he had to move to exile in Europe. And he only returned after the dictatorship was finished, and he could speak and work normally. And then I was studying with Freire after he returned from exile. And after this, I was invited to work with him at the Department of Education at São Paulo City. This was a splendid experience because can you imagine Paulo Freire, the most respected educator, one of the most respected educators in the world, the author of the Pedagogy of the Oppressed, the Pedagogy of of Autonomy, Pedagogy as Practice of Liberty. He was in charge of the educational system in the greatest city in Latin America. And I was part of his communication and planning team. We saw that Freire's ideas and proposals could be put in practice not only in non-formal contexts, but in the educational, formal education system. We saw that dialogue, cooperation, transformation, putting knowledge into transforming knowledge and information in practice. These were things that could be done inside primary schools, secondary schools, high schools. And that's what happened in São Paulo City during the administration of Paulo Freire and his team. And after this experience, I was invited to be part of a team that is my professional family till I think till I die. That is CECIP. And because after I die, I will continue inspiring. My spirit will continue there, not haunting the team, but inspiring them.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful team. This organization, CECIP, that stands for Center for Creation of Popular Image, is a civil society organization, not a non-for-profit, that has as focus communication and education towards civil rights, sustainability, culture of peace. And Paulo Freire was one of the founding fathers of this organization. And also Claudius Checon, that is a great artist. He is a cartoonist. That he transformed ideas in drawings, you know. Here you can see one of his drawings. Here's Claudius' view of Paulo Freire as a Don Quixote.
A Don Quixote with the pencil. I like it.
This is the man who is the leader of CECIP, Claudius Checon. And there we produce educative materials and publications. And with these materials, publications, and videos, we train agents for change in schools, in communities, social movements.
So how would, this whole summit is about story. How are you attempting to shift the story of education or social change? In what way is that story needing to move from where it is currently to something different?
Well, Mary Alice, we are living a transition. We are in a time of transitions. We are now in the move from a time in which learners were considered people who were there to listen to someone who knew more from them, people who must stay there silent and just accept the knowledge that was transferred to them. People who were submissive to an authority that was outside from them. We are changed from this stage to a stage in which learners are considered partners from those who are teaching them. Teachers and learners are together the same endeavor. They are learning with each other. And why they are learning together? They are learning together in order to change reality. This is the objective of education, of learning, is changing reality. So also, I think another big challenge we face is to change the views people have of education as a process that happens only in schools or in universities. we now must understand that education is a process that can happens in schools, in universities as formal education process, but it also happens in non-formal contexts. What you do, for instance, is high-level education, non-formal education.
Mm-hmm.
When you go to a movie, this is education also. People who are making movies, people who are writing books, they are also educators. And also people who are mothers and fathers who are talking to their children, they are educating also. And people on the streets who are walking with their dogs and they are collecting the dirt of their dogs, they are educating also.
So it's like we're all educating each
Everyone,
other all the time.
exactly, is what Freire said. Freire said, um, no one educates no one. People educate each other in communion.
Mm-hmm.
It's this communion of learnings, this connection between learnings in different spaces, in different times, that makes transformative education. If you stay only in your department, in your square, and you don't go out and connect with others, you cannot transform things. So connection, articulation is the key word, and connection is dialogue, and that
Mm-hmm.
dialogue is listening. So the most important thing, most important characteristic of a good educator, be him or her formal, non-formal, or informal educator, is listening. Listen to the story of the other, respecting the story of the other, learning with the story of the other, and connecting the small stories to a bigger one. That is this big transition we have to make between unsustainability, violence, and violence to sustainability and peace. We are a great network of people all over the planet
Mm.
who are involved in this transition. We only must be aware of this. Must be aware of each other's. We must be conscious of that we are part of this revolution that is in course, that is happening. It's a revolution without weapons. It's a revolution of forms of thinking, of forms of seeing, of forms of listening, forms of cooperating with each other.
So there's a lot of you mentioned the word violence. There's a lot of violence going on towards people who don't have whatever form of power is seen to be economic power or political power. How can education help to transform that violence towards people who don't have the power?
Yeah. Paulo Freire used it to say that the greatest violence we can suffer is to be prohibited of fulfilling our potential as human beings.
Mm.
A person who is forbidden, who is hindered in his potential to be complete, to be whole, it's suffering a great violence.
Mm-hmm.
This is in this is in the birth of all violence. And when this happens, when people have not access to their basic rights, you see, you cannot fulfill yourself as a complete, a whole human being if you do not have access to land, to food and healthy food, not on this food contaminated by poisons, agricultural poisons. If you do not have access to housing, if you do not have the access to health, to transportation, to education, to a good quality education. So you have to have these rights in order to fulfill yourself as a whole human being. So, if to fight against violence is to fight for the rights of people, is to fight for for human rights. With this, we will stop violence. There is a complete wrong comprehension that we fight violence with more violence. For instance, a person does something wrong, and that person must be punished. Punition is violence. If the person has committed some violent act, that person does not need more violence, needs dialogue, needs someone who understands what were the needs she or he had that were not being fulfilled, that led this person to commit violence. So, in schools, for instance, or in the interactions in society, when something negative happens, what we need to do is not focus in the negative thing that has happening, but focus in the future. What can be done in order that this negative thing does not happen anymore? If we focus in the future, then we can reconnect, we can restore what has been armed by violence or the conflict. That's why CECIP has participated in this project that was the Restorative Justice Project. It was the first time in Brazil that we have listened about this new kind of justice that is not for punishing people, but for restoring interactions that have been broken by violence. So CECIP has act in schools, has to train teachers and students to deal with conflict and violence through dialogue. And by making things to compensate the harm caused by violence. We call this the restorative circles or the circles of peace. I think this is fascinating because this approach of restorative justice is a planetary approach. It started with people from native people from New Zealand, where you live. You must have heard of restorative justice in New Zealand, because their restorative justice is part of the justice system. Also in Canada, the native people use it, restorative justice to make up conflicts and violence. In South Africa, and then from all this place, it came to Brazil through some revolutionary judges. And one of these judges that was the Judge Eduardo Melo, invited CECIP to introduce this approach in schools. This happened in 2003. Nowadays, in 3 schools, nowadays we have hundreds of schools in Brazil using this approach. the school system is also using it. It is becoming a public policy. So it's not it's not a majority of people who adopts this. The majority of people still believes in punishing, in sending the student to to the
Correction
punishment
facility or
ground,
something.
or
Yeah.
yes, or the adult sending the person to prison. The majority of people still believes this, but we are in the process of changing minds and feelings toward this question. And it's so beautiful to think that in a decade or 2 decades from now, we will only have restorative justice. Prisons will not will be abolished. Prisons will become museums. You see, because they do not work. It's nonsense. If the person is ill, it's sick, it's mentally sick, it must be treated. If it's not mentally sick and does not have to be treated in a hospital, it must connect with, restore the connections with others, and discover how to fix the bad things that were done. That's the way things works. You make a plan, the aggressor and the person who suffered the aggression, and together you come to a solution for the situation that was created, and you move ahead. I'm
So this
very
is
happy to be part of this story of restorative justice.
yeah. So that is a restoring of the justice system about how it could work, but actually, what does it mean? What does justice mean?
Yeah.
If it were balanced across all of those who were part of something going out of balance, actually, right?
Yeah.
So now you're also
restore equilibrium.
Yeah, back to equilibrium. So now you're working also on a solidarity economy. You're also trying to shift that kind of a story. So what's happening there for you?
Yeah, and these two projects are connected.
Okay.
All these stories are connected. You see, because when you think of culture of peace, you think of global citizenship, because culture of peace and restorative justice is part of a planetary movement that goes beyond frontiers, beyond borders. Humanity is now starting to think in a planetary way. And there is these movements that are without borders. You see, the movement of story activism. You have people of all countries. You are not anymore an American. You are an American planetary. As I am a Brazilian planetary. We have two identities. One is the national identity, and is the other that is greater, that is the planetary identity. We identify each other as brothers and sisters, as parts of the same human family, and together we are trying to solve problems that are problems from humanity. They are not national problems anymore. The problem of violence, of drugs, is not a national problem. It's planetary. The problem of climate change is planetary.
Refugees.
Refugees is planetary, and if the governments are not cooperating and they are fighting each other, civil society all over the world are connected. Civil society are connected. You see, there are Israeli citizens and Palestinian citizens working together to finish the war in the West, in Middle West. civil society does not. Planetary civil society is building planetary peace. And to build planetary peace we need to build planetary social justice. And to build planetary social justice and sustainability, environmental sustainability, we must change the way we produce things. We must change the way we consume things. We trade things. We relate, interact with each other. We communicate with each other. So the economic way to relate with mankind has found to relate with nature and with each other is completely destructive. And what is being built nowadays is alternatives to this, sustainable alternatives to this. And this is what we call all over the world solidarity economy. It's an economy based on cooperation, an economy where in the center of concern is not profit, but is human being, is the human being and the relationship of this human being with nature. That must be a relationship of cooperation and not of destruction. What we've done so far is treating our Mother Earth as Mother Earth was an enemy. We are destroying it. And now we must change it. We must regenerate the systems we have harmed. We have to make a restorative justice between humanity and nature. You see. So that's why educators all over the world are part of a global campaign, that is the global campaign for a global curriculum for solidarity economy. When we think of a global curriculum, it's not a curriculum that is the same all over the world, but we are thinking with a curriculum with a global dimension. And a curriculum that includes not only formal education, but non-formal education as well. Informal education as well. And what is all these initiatives all over the world have in common is the focus in building alternatives to the present model of economy we have. So this campaign is a very, very revolutionary one because it's not sponsored by any government, by any foundation. It's sprung out of civil society.
So it's a people's movement.
People's movement, and they're connecting everywhere.
Fantastic. So if somebody wanted to learn more about this, so we're coming to the end of our time, I could talk to you about this for hours. But if somebody wanted to learn about how can I know more about this restorative justice, how can I learn more about the solidarity economy, what would your advice be to them?
Well, we have in our website in CECIP, we have lots of materials. And also we have the website of the campaign for a global curriculum of solidarity economy.
And those are both linked to your bio, which is in the light box with your picture, so people can go there and find them.
And I would like to invite everyone to be present of our next meeting that will happen in Kenya, in Nairobi, my dear friend, our dear friend Ben Loco will probably talk more about this, but will be a meeting of practitioners and of educators all over the world in Africa, that is the mother of humanity, and in which we will share our practices, and we will connect with each other, and will strengthen our hope in our power to change things and change the stories we are protagonists.
And that's happening in December this year, isn't it?
Yes, it will be in December this year in Roland Camp. It is a scout camp near Kibera, that is the greatest slum neighborhood in Nairobi, and where they are doing incredible work to change the lives of children, adolescents, and building peace there.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing this journey, and I hope our conversation really stimulates people to look more at some of these areas that they can help to change, and to be reminded we're all educating each other. So please be out there doing some good education. Paulo, it was so nice to have you in this conversation. Madza, thank you so much for being in conversation.
Bye-bye, dear.
Bye.